Hi, everyone, this is the Encyclopedia channel. The book that this program interprets for you is a biography, Unstoppable, Sigi B, Wilzig's astonishing journey from Auschwitz survivor and penniless immigrant to Wall Street legend. The author of the book is Joshua M. Green, a scholar, biographer and producer who specializes in the study of the Holocaust. Joshua's best-selling biography of Holocaust survivors. He was also a popular lecturer and was invited to give a speech at the Pentagon. His documentary on the history of the Holocaust was broadcast on the Discovery Channel and had a big impact. And the protagonist of this book is none other than Sigi B, Wilziger, published in 2021, is Joshua's latest work. In the process of writing this book, Joshua was soberly aware that there are very few people who can provide credible testimony for that period of history. This makes him cherish this work all the more. Joshua conducted more than 100 detailed interviews with Sigi's family members, friends, former employees, colleagues, customers and partners, and also sorted out a large amount of historical data to restore Sigi's complete life. Sigi B, Wilzig was born in 1926 and died in 2003. In the 20th century he lived, the history was ups and downs, and talents emerged in large numbers, but Sigi B, Wilzig was neither a political figure nor a famous person in the field of science and culture. He only went to elementary school, and although he later achieved commercial success, he does not belong to the ranks of business giants we are most familiar with. So, why is Sigi B, Wilzig worthy of everyone's understanding? What did he experience during those war years? How did he create his business empire? What advantages can we learn from him? After listening to this episode, you will understand. Because Sigi B, Wilzig's life is very special. In the entire 20th century, and even on a longer time scale, few people have achieved such a large-span life leap as Sigi B, Wilzig. Sigi B, Wilzig, 8 brothers and sisters, was born in a poor family and was bullied since childhood. What's more unfortunate is that they lived in Germany before World War II, and the whole family was Jewish. Sigi B, Wilzig's 17 and 18 years were spent in Auschwitz concentration camp. In 2 years, he lost almost all his relatives, was forced to do inhuman labor every day, was cruelly abused by the Nazis, had no clothes, no food to eat, and faced the threat of death at any time. But he eventually pulled through. After World War II, Sigi B, Wilzig came to the United States alone and started from scratch. He started from cleaning toilets and sweatshops, and became the president of a listed oil company and the CEO of a commercial bank worth billions of dollars in 30 years. He has received the Israeli Prime Minister's Medal, the highest honor bestowed by the Israeli state on civilians, and has been a guest of 4 U.S. presidents. From a prisoner in Auschwitz to a financial giant on Wall Street, how did Sigi do it? I think you may also be curious about this question. Of course, this kind of understanding may still be a little weak if we only regard Sigi B, Wilzig as a sample of realizing personal value. Sigi B, Wilzig's life is closely bound with the destiny of the Jewish nation. The catastrophe that Sigi encountered in his early years was due to his Jewish identity. Throughout his life, the reason why he worked hard was not only for himself and his family to live a better life, but also for the suffering and honor of the Jewish nation. After understanding Sigi B, Wilzig's life, we will also have a more realistic and sensible understanding of the heavy history of the 20th century. Next, we will get to know this great protagonist through this high-quality biography. This interpretation is divided into 2 parts. In the first part, we first talk about Sigi's childhood and the 2 years he spent in the concentration camp, and see how these experiences shaped his character and way of life. In the second part, let's talk about how Sigi B, Wilzig established his own business empire after getting out of the concentration camp and made various remarkable achievements. First part. What kind of suffering Sigi B, Wilzig experienced in his early years, and what kind of impact these sufferings had on him. Sigi was born on March 11, 1926. At that time, his name was not Sigi, but Sigbert. Sigbert is the 7th of 8 children in a small town on the eastern border of Germany. The suffering of this family did not begin when they were taken to a concentration camp. In Germany at that time, the so-called pure-blood Germans had a deep-rooted hostility to the Jews. Sigbert's father supported his family by buying and selling scrap metal and furs, but because of his Jewishness, the Germans often bullied him and paid him unfair prices when doing business with him. Sigbert was also often bullied by those around him. On one occasion, a child of a Germanic peasant family even hung Sigbert upside down on a meat grinder, threatening to grind him to a pulp. Growing up in such a hostile environment, Sigbert developed an extremely alert personality. He kept an eye on the information around him, and he could always accurately judge his situation from the details. As we will see later, this ability helped Sigbert save himself several times in a concentration camp. During the dozen years that Sigbert grew up, the situation of German Jews became more and more dire. After Hitler came to power in 1932, Germanic cultural hostility towards the Jews became a real political threat. The Sigbert family's business could not continue in their hometown. After some consideration, they made a bold decision to go to Berlin. At that time, Berlin, the capital of Germany, was about to host the Olympic Games, and the eyes of the whole world were on Berlin. Sigbert's family members judged that under the supervision of the international community, the Nazi authorities had to behave a little bit better even if they hated the Jews. They did not choose to flee Germany because they still regarded Germany as their motherland in their hearts. Sigbert's family has been rooted in Germany for 6 generations. Sigbert's father was also a soldier in World War I, fighting for Germany and making military exploits. In the family's mind, they were Germans first and Jews second. In this way, the Sigbert family moved to Berlin. However, in hindsight, this choice was a fatal mistake. Since 1936, the Nazi German authorities no longer allowed Jewish children to go to school, and 10-year-old Sigbert was forced to leave school and work in a factory. On a cold night in early 1943, bad luck struck. 16-year-old Sigbert was arrested by a policeman while working the night shift at a factory and put on a public tram. Sigbert quickly judged from the policeman's clothes that this man was just an ordinary policeman, not a Nazi SS. In addition, the SS will drive by itself and will not take the tram. Thinking of this, Sigbert let go of some of his hostility, and decided to face this person with an attitude that was neither humble nor overbearing. On the tram, the policeman said to him, "I don't want to shoot you, but if you run away, I have to." Sigbert replied, "Okay, it's a deal, whatever you do to me, you have to do. I won't embarrass you. You don't have to shoot me. I'll sit next to you." Sigbert held out his hand to the policeman, which was still stained with oil from the factory. The policeman hesitated, but he shook his hand anyway. The person who shook hands with Sigbert was about to send him into a desperate situation, but Sigbert still maintained full dignity in front of him. In his subsequent life, Sigbert faced many terrible opponents. This is his consistent attitude, never reckless, and never show weakness. Sigbert was sent to the front of his family's apartment building. The entire building's residents, including Sigbert's family, were herded downstairs. Nazi officers yelled at them that they would be sent to a safe place where everyone would have a job. This is a lie. A week later, Sigbert, who was extremely hungry, was driven out of the dirty and crowded carriage. A carload of people was transported to Auschwitz concentration camp like livestock. Here, Sigbert's identity became prisoner 104732. On the first day he arrived in the concentration camp, this number was stabbed into his left arm, which became an indelible mark in his life. In the next 2 years, Sigbert encountered countless unimaginable disasters. Every choice he made every day could determine his life and death, and these choices were like flipping a coin, and it was impossible to judge which option would lead him to his death. This choice began the moment Sigbert stepped into the concentration camp. A guard asked Sigbert, "How old are you? What is your occupation?" Sigbert replied instinctively, "I am 18 years old and I am a skilled craftsman." But those 2 lies saved his life. Of the 3,800 people on the train that transported Sigbert to Auschwitz, only 600 answered these 2 questions correctly, and the remaining 3,200 were sent directly to the gas chambers. Over the next 2 years, life-or-death moments like this happened a dozen more times, and each time Sigbert made the choice to survive. Is there any logic behind Sigbert's choice? There is one, which is to constantly prove that you are still valuable. With this basic logic, Sigbert found a little initiative to survive. This is an extremely difficult thing. In a concentration camp, the fate of the prisoners is of course in the hands of the guards. Under the despotic power of the Nazis, most of the prisoners lost the will to live and were at the mercy of the enemy. But Sigbert understands that as long as he understands the operating rules of this system, he can send himself to a safer place bit by bit. At first, Sigbert was assigned the task of moving construction materials. He had to unload hundreds of kilograms of steel bars and concrete from the truck with his bare hands and carry them on his shoulders. The prisoners didn't have any protective gear, only wearing thin clothes, and their shoulders were quickly ground to bloody flesh. This is a very dangerous thing. Concentration camps did not provide prisoners with decent medical care, and the infection of a flesh wound could kill a person. Sigbert knew he had to change jobs quickly. But the power to distribute work is in the hands of the Nazis. What can Sigbert do? One day, on his way to work, Sigbert happened to encounter Nazis directing prisoners to build brick walls. He rushed out of his team, ran to the Nazi officer, saluted, and told him that he had been a bricklayer for 6 months. Seeing that Sigbert seemed to be of some use, the officer shrugged and sent him to a bricklaying site to teach his skills to other workers. At this time, Sigbert was in a very dangerous situation, because he had never been a bricklayer at all. If he showed any signs of telling, the Nazis would have killed him. What should I do to survive? Sigbert's method was to sell what he learned now. He would find a bricklayer on the construction site to learn something every day, and then teach what he learned to another bricklayer. In this way, he pretended to understand and deceived the Nazis. However, although it is easier than carrying steel and concrete, bricklaying is not a good job. Brickwork had to be done outdoors, and the winters in Auschwitz were cold and cloudy, and getting sick was no joke. Sigbert's next goal was to get himself indoors. There is a hospital in Auschwitz. Don't think it's a normal hospital. It only treats young prisoners so they can recover and go back to work. The old and infirm are sent straight to the gas chambers. In addition, the doctors here will also use prisoners for living experiments. Although the hospital is such a scary place, but in the hospital can escape the cold rain of Auschwitz, Sigbert decided to take another risk. He sneaks into the hospital and hears a doctor speaking Polish. Sigbert's hometown is on the border between Germany and Poland. He could speak a little Polish, so he recommended himself to the doctor in Polish, saying that he had experience as a nurse. This, of course, was again made up by Sigbert on the spot, but the doctor, impressed by his Polish-speaking skills, kept him. Do you think Sigbert is lucky too? What if the doctor doesn't take him in? What if the doctor handed him over to the guards and charged him again? Does Sigbert have a way to deal with it? Not really. Sigbert also admitted later that he was not fully sure of many of the decisions he made in Auschwitz, but the only thing he was sure of was that he would not wait to die where he must die. Even if he took his life, he would take risks to change his situation. Is Sigbert's strategy correct? It's hard to tell. Among the millions of prisoners in Auschwitz, Sigbert must not be the only one who dared to take risks, and more people failed to get out of the concentration camp alive, but Sigbert did survive. Since then, Sigbert has found a way to send himself to the laundry room and warehouse of the concentration camp. These places are safer and more likely to get things that can be used to save his life. In this way, Sigbert experienced countless dangers of death and spent 2 years in a concentration camp. In early 1945, the Soviet army invaded Germany, and Sigbert and his inmates were deported to the Mauthausen concentration camp in Austria. Finally, on May 5, 1945, the U.S. military marched into Mauthausen, and Sigbert was free. It is conceivable that a person who spends such 2 years in his teens will completely change his life. Now let's see how the ordeal shaped Sigbert. First of all, he will not prepare for something for a long time, but will be alert anytime, anywhere, ready to seize all possible opportunities and deal with all possible challenges. This is the way of survival he learned in the concentration camp. In the next few decades, whenever he encountered an opportunity that might bring changes in his life, Sigbert always tried his best to hold the opportunity in his hands first, and then find ways to adapt himself to the requirements of the new environment and new role. Plus, Sigbert had had enough of the Nazis in the concentration camps, which left him with a deep distaste for authority. He became a man of decisiveness, of one word, and sometimes even a bit of a domineering one. This tough temperament helped him win success in the business world, but it also brought a lot of pressure to those who lived around him. In the end, seeing many people die tragically every day, and facing the threat of death at any time, after living like this for 2 years, he returned to a normal and safe world. Siegbert felt that every second of his remaining life was a priceless gift, and his desire to live a good life was extremely strong. This long and dark ordeal failed to break Siegbert, but tempered him into a strong man with good intentions towards the world. For 2 years after the war, Siegbert worked for American intelligence agencies hunting down Nazi remnants in Austria. His team captures Nazi General Hans Goebbels, who slipped through the net. This man was the younger brother of Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's Reich propaganda minister, and one of Hitler's most ardent supporters. For this remarkable service, Siegbert was awarded a free boat ticket to the United States. On December 12, 1947, Siegbert woke up from the cabin, boarded the deck, and saw the Statue of Liberty standing in New York Harbor in the early morning fog. At this time, Siegbert was 21 years old, with only $240, and was about to start a new life in the United States. He changed his name to Nishiki, a name that would be known to many in the future. The second part. In the first part just now, we learned about the hardships that Sigi experienced in his youth. Next, let's take a look at how Sigi B. Wilzig built his business empire step by step from scratch after coming to the United States. Sigi B. Wilzig's first job in the United States was shoveling snow from sidewalks. In December 1947, there was a snowstorm in New York. Xiji earns $2 for a day of snow shoveling. On the second day after getting the job, Sigi B. Wilzig found 2 children from the neighborhood and asked them to help him shovel snow, each of whom would give 50 cents. Sigi B. Wilzig made a net profit of $1 a day without doing anything, and by the end of the month, he had earned $20. It's a small thing, but you can tell that Sigi B. Wilzig is very business-minded and never content to work for someone else. As long as he has the opportunity, he will definitely create a career of his own. Of course, before that, Sigi B. Wilzig still needs a period of accumulation. He has worked as a worker in 2 sweatshops successively, producing small items such as school bags and bow ties. The environment in these factories is very bad, and the air is filled with a pungent glue smell. But compared with the place where Sigi B. Wilzig stayed before, this condition is good enough. Nishiki works hard and never complains. Not only that, but he also took the initiative to apply to the boss for more jobs. He helped his boss clean the office and factory toilets, which earned him an extra $1.50 a week. Although such dirty work as cleaning toilets may seem disrespectful to Sigi B. Wilzig's colleagues, Sigi B. Wilzig doesn't care about it. As long as there is an opportunity to improve his life, he will never let it go. Since then, Sigi B. Wilzig has changed many jobs. In the 6th year since he came to the United States, he has partnered with a friend to open a small factory for making coin purses. Sigi B. Wilzig's self-motivation aroused the favor of a woman. The lady's name is Naomi, and little Sigi B. Wilzig is 8 years old, also a Jew. But unlike Sigi B. Wilzig, Naomi has not lived through the Holocaust. She grew up in a privileged environment. Naomi's parents were both native-born Americans. While the Sigi B. Wilziges suffered in concentration camps, Naomi's father built a wealthy family business and became a powerful real estate businessman, mainly in the cemetery business. Naomi is determined to marry Sigi B. Wilzig despite her parents' reluctance to marry their precious daughter to a destitute refugee. She saw a precious quality in Sigi, a man who had endured unimaginable suffering, but still had a zest for life and a good sense of humor. Naomi and Sigi B. Wilzig married in 1954. Sigi B. Wilzig assured Naomi that they would live a good life together, but he didn't want a penny from Naomi's family. He wanted to earn the wealth of life by himself. Next, Nishiki worked a few more sales jobs. He took care of the cemetery business for his father-in-law and achieved good results, and his father-in-law gradually felt relieved of him. At this time, Sigi B. Wilzig had a happy family, a smooth career, and lived a life of the American middle class. For a person who survived a concentration camp, such a life is as good as the next life. Is Sigi B. Wilzig satisfied? Will he stop there? Not at all. Nishiki begins investing in a company's stock. This company is called Wilziger, and it is an oil company with a small scale. Sigi B. Wilzig thought his investment was safe, but soon he met a respected old businessman. The veteran businessman, a stock investing connoisseur, told Siggi that Wilshire's business looked promising, but that its board of directors was timid and there were many mismanagements. Only with a capable leader can this company emerge from its predicament and realize its potential. When Sigi B. Wilzig just started investing in stocks, he learned from experts that the company he invested in was unreliable. What should he do? Should I quickly sell my stocks? Sigi B. Wilzig thought about it, or else, buy this company. As long as the company is bought, Sigi B. Wilzig can personally lead the company on the right track, which is much more interesting than helping his father-in-law sell tombstones. To run an oil company, how much does Sigi B. Wilzig know about the energy industry, as well as related financial and management knowledge? He knows nothing about these fields. But this is just like he said in the concentration camp that he worked as a bricklayer and a nurse. The important thing is to grasp the opportunity first. As for the necessary knowledge and skills, they can be mastered through practice. Sigi B. Wilzig's approach may not be suitable for everyone, but for an extremely smart and ambitious businessman like Sigi B. Wilzig, this strategy is undoubtedly the most efficient. So, with Siggi's financial resources at the time, could he afford Wilshire? It's not even close. Over the next few years, Sigi mobilized all his family and friends to join his investment group, and together they bought all of Wilshire's outstanding stock. It sounds unbelievable today that a privately organized investment group acquires the management right of a listed company by buying stocks, but it was still possible in the United States in the 1960s. In this way, Sigi B. Wilzig's stake in Wilshire gradually increased to a level that cannot be ignored. Sigi B. Wilzig's investment group sat on Wilshire's board of directors, and the number of seats it occupied was still increasing. Finally, in 1965, the 39-year-old Sigi became the chairman of Wilshire. Since then, Sigi B. Wilzig's talents as a manager have really emerged. When he took over Wilshire, the company's total revenue for the first 9 months of the year was $1.3 million, with a net loss of nearly $500,000. 5 years later, under Sigi B. Wilzig's management, the company had an annual revenue of nearly $9 million and a net profit of $700,000. The company's business has also expanded from oil to auto parts and electronic products, and the structure is more stable and safer. Although the other shareholders of the company did not welcome Sigi B. Wilzig's arrival at first, thinking that he was a layman and looked down on his Jewish identity, after 5 years, they had to admit that it was a lucky thing that Sigi B. Wilzig managed the company and brought them real benefits. But Sigi B. Wilzig's vision goes far beyond that. He wanted the company to continue to grow, and to achieve further growth, the company needed steady cash flow. Where is the abundance of cash? Bank. Then buy a bank. Sigi's development strategy sounds naive, but that's how he's always done things. After some research, Sigi B. Wilzig settled on the bank he wanted to buy, Trust Company of New Jersey. This commercial bank started 30 years before Sigi B. Wilzig was born. By 1945, the year Sigi B. Wilzig was liberated, deposits in the New Jersey Trust totaled more than $100 million. People at the time would never have imagined that the future owner of the bank would be a refugee from Auschwitz. Sigi adopted the same strategy as when he acquired Wilshire, buying the outstanding shares of the New Jersey Trust Company in the market one by one. By 1970, Sigi B. Wilzig held more than 50% of the shares of the bank and became the actual controller of the bank. Soon after, the bank's board of directors elected Sigi as chairman and chief executive officer. At 44, Sigi B. Wilzig is the youngest person to hold both titles at any of the big U.S. banks. This is the 25th year since he came out of the concentration camp. Over the next 30 years of his life, Sigi B. Wilzig made more extraordinary achievements. His strong personality also brought him a lot of trouble. In order to maintain his absolute control over Wilshire Company and New Jersey Trust Company, he became the first person in history to take the Federal Reserve Bank of the United States to court. Although it was a losing case, Sigi B. Wilzig managed to preserve the legacy he had created for the family. At the peak of his career, he was simultaneously the top leader of an oil company listed on the New York Stock Exchange and a commercial bank listed on the NASDAQ. From a prisoner in Auschwitz to a Wall Street banker, is Sigi satisfied with his life? Maybe so. Sigi B, Wilzig's children recall their father as a very happy man. He would generously give expensive gifts to strangers and burst into song in public. The children thought it was funny what their father did at first, but then they got used to it. Once, Sigi B, Wilzig was singing loudly in a restaurant, and someone asked his children curiously, "Is your father the owner of this restaurant?" Because of this, every day is worth giving it your best effort, and every day is worth celebrating. Of course, Sigi B, Wilzig did not forget the suffering in the concentration camp, nor could he. In 1975, when he accepted the Israeli Prime Minister's medal, the highest honor awarded to civilians by the Israeli state, he said to the people present, "I have not been liberated, and I am in Auschwitz every day." Sigi, who is strong, wealthy, and happy on the outside, has an unhealable wound in his heart. He had a nightmare all his life, dreaming about everything that happened in the concentration camp. He also has many quirks that ordinary people can't understand. For example, he can't stand the brown spots on the peel of bananas because it reminds him of rotting food in concentration camps. Throughout his life, Sigi B, Wilzig never stopped telling people what he saw in Auschwitz, the most horrific experience he had ever experienced, and something he would not allow the world to forget under any circumstances. Sigi B, Wilzig was the first Holocaust survivor to address cadets at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. He also used his outstanding business skills to promote the establishment of the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. Because of this important contribution, he and Naomi were invited to the White House to have dinner with the president and his wife. In 2000, Xiji was diagnosed with advanced multiple myeloma, an incurable blood cancer. At the end of his life, the last thing Sigi did was videotape his testimony about Auschwitz. On January 7, 2003, Xiji passed away. In his 77 years of life, Xiji experienced history, created his own history, and recorded the history as it was. The life of Sigi B, Wilziger came to an end here. Frankly speaking, Sigi B, Wilzig's success may be difficult to replicate. He has experienced hardships that ordinary people cannot experience, and the era when he created a business legend no longer exists. So, what else can we learn from Sigi B, Wilzig's story? I think the number from Auschwitz on Sigi's arm is a metaphor. For Sigi B, Wilzig, that horrific experience changed his life forever, shaping his character and the way he interacted with the world. Those years of suffering polished his tools and ability to deal with challenges, but also left him with incurable pain and indelible obsession. With these imprints that are destined to accompany him throughout his life, what is Sigi B, Wilzig's choice? When he had 10,000 reasons to feel desperate about life, he chose to embrace the world with 10,000 enthusiasm. When he made this choice, he found the unceasing vitality in the suffering. Suffering became his blessing. This is the end of this episode of the show. What do you think about it differently? Welcome to leave a message to discuss with everyone. Hey, if you like our channel, please subscribe us. Haha, remember to like it.